Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Well, it's Tuesday and that means it's Tag Tuesday, and this Tuesday I had the pleasure of being tagged by Pat over at Book Chat with Pat for the Spring is in the Air tag. This is a tag that was created by Danielle over at The Uncommon Reader and Reney at Beyond Books. And I was happy to get tagged in it because it looked like a really interesting tag, and with a lot of fun prompts. They're all spring-based prompts, which is cool. Spring has the prospect of spring has definitely energized me and gotten me excited to do even more reading. So that's awesome. The weather is slowly changing over here in Cleveland, Ohio. We're still getting a lot of just incessantly cloudy days, punctuated by moments of the sun peeking through the clouds, like right now. But regardless, I'm excited for the upcoming spring season, and I'm happy that I got tagged in these. So I'll just jump right into the questions. The first one is Spring Chicks. Name a book that made you feel warm and fuzzy. Now, I will mention, before I give my answer, that Pat's answer to this question was Leonard and Hungry Paul, which was a book that I had never heard of before. But when she said it and then showed the cover of it, I thought, my goodness, that looks so adorable. So I Googled it, looked into it, and yeah, that looks like a book that's right up my alley. It looks like a very, very fun book to read. So thank you, Pat, for that recommendation. I will definitely be adding that one to my TBR. For me personally, I don't really read books to make myself feel warm and fuzzy. I don't like, obviously, reading books that make me feel the opposite of those things, but I don't really go for books that do that to me. If I want to feel warm and fuzzy, the only things that consistently make me feel that way are other people's bodies being pressed up against me. But that's not something we need to get into right now. So I consulted my bookshelf, and I came up with this one, The Long Ships, by Franz Bengtsson. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He's Swedish. And this was a great book. This is a New York Review of Books classic reprint here, which I was happy to come across in my local used bookstore. I'd never heard of it, but I picked it up because it seemed interesting, and I gave it a read almost right away and loved it. And yeah, it does make me feel warm and fuzzy in the sense that it's an adventure story, but it's always got this lightheartedness to it. So it never feels like it's, this, dire tragedy or anything like that. It's always got this like levity to it, and especially in the second half of the book, it sort of becomes a little bit like the Decameron, where a bunch of people are sitting around and telling stories, and it feels extremely warm and inviting, and it feels like you're just sitting by a campfire or whatever, and people are exchanging stories with one another. So this did, in a certain sense, make me feel warm and fuzzy, and it's definitely a book that I recommend if you think that's interesting. It's sort of a Nordic tale of Vikings, so really interesting and really fun. Let's see, what was question 2? Question 2 is April Showers, a book that is set near, in, or on the water, or that has the word water in the title. Well, the first one that came to my mind was, of course, Moby Dick. Can't go wrong with Moby Dick. Obviously, it's set on the water. It doesn't have water in the title, but it is definitely, from the jump, associated with the water. So I would recommend this one, and this was the first one that came to mind with that prompt. Can't go wrong with Moby Dick. Number 3 is Spring Break. Talk about a time you took a break from reading and why. I don't really take breaks from reading now that I'm sort of hooked onto the activity. However, I'm not going to lie and say that there aren't times that I slack off with reading, but I don't really consider that taking a break. I would just consider that being lazy and not being able to control myself. So yes, there are times when I will spend my time, instead of reading, doom scrolling, which is not an activity that I would recommend. This channel so far is dedicated to me recommending books, but doom scrolling would be something that I wholeheartedly do not recommend. So those would be the only times that I take a break or something like that. But I mean, even if I'm going through something genuinely hard and difficult, I will find a solace in reading. I won't use that as an opportunity to take a break from reading. I will use that as an opportunity to actually double down and do more reading. Recently, I spent time in a hospital next to somebody's bed, and I spent that time, when I was with them, reading. Because that was an activity that brought me solace in those very difficult moments. So, for me, if I take a break from reading, it's because I'm being lazy. It's because I'm feeling bad for myself in some way, or I'm just not being able to control myself. So that's not something that I'm particularly proud of. But number 4 is Swallow's Homecoming, a book or an author you always come back to for comfort. Kind of similar to question 1, but I chose Tolstoy, Anna Karenina. Tolstoy is an author just in general who writes these books that are just so in touch with humanity, I feel like, that there is naturally a comfort to them. His fiction is extremely comforting to me. His biography is extremely uncomfortable for me. A man who is able to write books with such pathos seemed to lack that in his own life to a certain extent. I don't want to get into it, but the things that he wrote, particularly and especially Anna Karenina for me, are books that I derive a lot of comfort from, because he seems to have faith in humans to a certain extent. I think he lost that, but this book seems to have faith in the human experience. It seems to celebrate life in a very fundamental and profound way, and I derive a lot of comfort from that. And so sometimes I go back to this book and just read little snippets of it when I really feel like I need to pick me up. And they're usually actually quite sad snippets of moments of moments of death and whatnot. But regardless, all of those scenes are couched in this context of a book that really feels like it's holding you in some sense and understanding you and empathizing with you, and it's just a great book. So you don't need me to tell you that. It's not a Karenina. It's one of the greatest novels ever written. But yes, Tolstoy in general and this book specifically are books that I go back to for comfort, and I get a lot out of that. Okay, what number are we on? Number 6, Eggs in a Basket, 3 books you want to read this spring. Stay tuned. I'm going to make a video very soon about my April TBR, and then we'll have a lot more than 3 books on it. So you will be able. I will indirectly answer that question in an upcoming video. Number 7 is Green Pastures, a classic that never gets old. I mean, I've already mentioned 2, the Moby Dick and Anna Karenina, but I chose the Iliad because the Iliad is the greatest story ever told, and it's the classic of classics. So you can't go wrong with the Iliad. So I would choose that. But of course there are more than I would ever be able to recount here. But I might as well just go for the greatest of them, right? Number 8. I feel like I skipped one. I know I skipped one. Which one did I skip? Blooms. Yes, number 5. I skipped number 5. Blooms, a book that started slowly but blossomed into one of your favorite reads. I'm sorry about that. I chose Richard Holmes's The Age of Wonder. And I chose this book because it does exactly what that prompt asks for. There are tons of books, actually, in my mind that does this, but this one did it the most egregiously. It wasn't that this book started slowly, but it was a book that, in my mind, I read it, I thought, that was cool. I really enjoyed that. That was fun. Closed the last page of it, threw it back on the bookshelf. This was about a year ago, and ever since then I've been thinking about it. It's just never left me. It has never, ever left me. I think this book is a wonder, at least for me personally. It just hit all the right notes, and it wasn't even something that I realized at the time that I was going to like so much. I realized as I was reading it how much fun I was having and how much I was enjoying it, but I didn't think that it was going to be a book that I was going to just be always thinking about and always remembering, and it's funny at times. Richard Holmes was somebody who understood the Romantic generation of poets and writers so well, and he wrote this book that really does feel like a love letter to that period. It's not just people like Coleridge or any of the Romantic poets that first come to mind, but it's also the science and the just overall experience of what it was like to be alive during this time, what it was like to be on the cutting edge of all of the things that were being developed, what he writes about. For Humphrey Davies, the inventor of nitrous oxide and so many other things, is incredible. Absolutely incredible. There's so many things, and in fact, I want to cut myself off here because I will reread this very soon and definitely make a video about it because I just loved it so much, and I wasn't expecting it to. So this is a book that definitely bloomed for me. Sorry I missed that question. We went straight from 4 to 6 there. After that is number 8, Pollen, a book or author you're allergic to, which is a question that I love because I always use that word allergic to describe certain authors and books. I think it's perfect. I think it's the perfect word to describe my reaction, a very allergic reaction to certain books and certain authors. And a bunch of them sprang to mind. I don't want to be contentious and list them all off here, so I'll go towards something that a hill that I'm more willing to die on, which is the hill of philosophy being largely and almost exclusively crap and not worth reading. And I would say king among those, in my own experience, would be somebody like a Jacques Lacan or Derrida. These were authors that I read in college. I took them very seriously. I took the ideas very seriously. I was writing my thesis on apophysis and the works of Maurice Blanchot and, all of this stuff. It's a time in my life that I don't like to think about anymore, and it was a time in my life that I thought reading was a chore and a task and something that you did basically to make yourself smarter, and you had to deal with the fact that these works were boring and complicated, and they sent you into existential crises and whatnot. That was just part and parcel of what it was like to be, a smart cookie, man. And I'm so glad that I'm past that. I'm so glad that instead of reading books like that, I could read books like this, which are just as... first of all, they're 10 times smarter, in my opinion, but they're also 10 times, 1,000 times more enjoyable. So I would be allergic to most philosophy in general, but specifically the worst... most just disagreeable permutations of it, like the deconstructionist philosophers and whatnot. And I want to clarify, because I'm not sure who's watching my videos. There are a lot of people with different opinions on these types of things. I want to clarify that my issue usually with philosophy isn't so much that I disagree with it. It's the fact that there is an aesthetic dimension to writing that is not unimportant. It's very important. Steve Donahue talks about this, and he says that, if you're writing a boring book, you're writing a bad book. You have to write something that is worth reading, and I don't care how good your idea is. If the idea is being conveyed in the most laborious manner possible, the most convoluted manner possible, then I could just access much more interesting ideas that are expressed much more interestingly in somebody like Shakespeare. Why would I not do that? Why would I sit through 700 pages of just the most arcane jargon imaginable when I could just read Hamlet, or I could just read somebody like Richard Holmes, or I could read Homer? I mean, give me a break. I have more than I could ever read to begin with, just available to me in this room, in my local used bookstore. I don't need to go and seek out, these arcane works of philosophy and sort of just cry bloody tears over them because I don't understand it, and I don't, it's so, these concepts are so huge, man. They're so important and big, and anyway, don't mean to get into a rant, but yes, I am allergic. I am allergic to writers like that and books like that. Number 9 is bonus Equinox. is a bonus question. It's called Equinox. Find 2 books on your bookshelf that have the exact same number of pages and talk briefly about them. I failed at this. Pat failed at this as well, so we are on the same boat. Hopefully that the creators of this tag will forgive the both of us. I don't have a Goodreads or anything like that, and I think that this question is more targeted to people who have some kind of app or some kind of thing like Goodreads to keep track of their reading. I don't do that, so I had to consult my bookshelf and flip through manually. Gosh, I don't even know how many books, 20 or so books on my shelf. Couldn't find anything that had the exact same page number. So I did fail on that. Hopefully the creators of the tag can forgive me on that. And then number 10 is tag others. First of all, if you're watching this video and you think that these questions are interesting, consider yourself tagged, as I would love to see your answers to them. Again, they're very creative and unique, and I really appreciate being tagged myself. And so, actually, I've done 5 tags so far. I've never actually tagged anyone specifically. This will be my first time. I'd love to see Joe Spivey's answers to these questions. What books does Joe Spivey read to make himself feel warm and fuzzy inside, I wonder? Yeah, so that's it for me today. I had a lot of fun answering those questions, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.